Hello everyone, it's Emma and we're back in the car again. This is like the third time this month, but today it's like the first sunny day in June. On a weekend, I mean. I thought we were gonna go to the beach today, so I wanted to take you along with us, show you the beach and everything, as well as I wanted to talk about my environmentalism journey, why I'm an environmentalist today, what brought me here, that kind of stuff, and just kind of let you know that, I wasn't like raised in this lifestyle. I haven't always been like a earth hippie or whatever. So you can come from any walk of life, any sort of background, and you can care about the earth no matter where you're from. So that's what I want to talk about today. We stopped to get some snacks again. Show them this. This is a really cool Japanese invention. It's basically like an ice cream sandwich with cone on the outside so it doesn't melt all over the place. It's so genius. I got some banana chips. Dan got some pistachios. I also got these. These are dango. Follow me on Instagram. I tried to make them myself at home one time and I failed. But it's basically just a rice dumpling covered in some sauce. And then we both got a grilled rice ball. Lots of plastic, but you can't really avoid that in Japan, unfortunately. And now we are almost to the beach. We're going to Ike Island if anyone lives here and is interested, and you can get there by car, which is pretty cool. Okay, we made it to the beach. Neither of us have been here before, and it's super pretty. In one of my recent videos, I talked about all of the low waste habits that I learned from my childhood. We did do a lot of things that happened to be low waste, which was pretty cool. We grew up on a farm. I grew up in a farming community, so we just learned to respect the land from a really young age, but we never purposefully, intentionally lived low waste lifestyle. I don't think I was ever really a hyper consumer, but I certainly wasn't a conscious consumer. We did buy a lot brand new. Every single person in my family owned a car. We would drive separate all the time. So we did live pretty wasteful lives as well. The downside of living so far inland and so far away from civilization and big cities is that I never quite understood the consequences of my action. What happened to my waste, I never knew what happened to it. It was just kind of those out of sight, out of mind things. And it wasn't until I moved out of my home state that I realized, wow, we have a real trash issue, a real pollution issue. And I never knew how much I was actually contributing to it until I left. I started living in Texas in September 2017. I didn't really actually get to live there until December because I had my initial basic training to go through. So in December is when I actually got to my technical school in San Angelo, Texas. And that is when, like, instantly I realized how big the plastic and the trash problem was, because that was the first time I've actually been in an actual, like, I've actually lived in a city for an extended period of time and not just like a weekend trip or something. And I guess the other difference too was back in Ohio and my home, we had a recycling program. When I got to Texas and I saw all this plastic in the trash, what in the world is going on? Why is there so much plastic in the trash? I brought it up to some of my leadership and they're like, oh, well, we used to do it, but we don't anymore because Texas is a non-incentive state, which means that you don't get money for your recycling. So it's all out of pocket. And most states are that way, but San Angelo had no recycling program, though there was recycling centers. So once I found out that there was actually recycling centers in San Angelo, I figured, why don't I take matters into my own hands and do the recycling for the base? So my goal was to do it for the entire base. Unfortunately, I didn't have the means to do that. I only had a small car. Just kind of like everything else in the realm of environmentalism, no one else cares enough to actually help. So I didn't really get much help with this project. My goal was to get people, a few friends together, some people with some trucks, some people who wouldn't mind spending time on their weekends doing this, but unfortunately I couldn't get any help. The good news is the recycling center that I took all my stuff to actually gave me bins to use for free. I took them to my dorm and I was able to collect the recycling for about 300 people for about 6 months. So that's kind of where my inspiration behind my end quote of "your small changes have a big impact in the long run." It was a small action for me. A couple hours out of my day every Saturday, crush bottles, put them into bags, and drive them to the recycling center and sort them. Just a couple hours every week. It felt meaningless at the time. But looking back, all the recycling for 300 people for 6 months didn't go in the landfill because I spent a couple hours doing it. And that's what really opened my eyes to the recycling/plastic waste crisis, if you want to call it that. My next big revelation is when I moved to Okinawa.
When we wake, hear the birds and see the sun. Side by side our fears are done. Oh, the good times just begun. Oh, we know what we have, let's hold on tight. Found what we're looking for in life. Call us crazy, but things are finally right.
So I moved to Okinawa in June of 2018. I can't believe it's been 2 years already. So obviously at that point I was cognizant of the waste issue in the world, and I had started diving more into zero waste and being more interested in that. And when I first moved here, I basically had stopped consuming the big four, and if you don't know what that is plastic water bottles, utensils, plastic bags, and single-use coffee cups. Those are the most commonly used single-use items in the world. And I was doing that, and I thought I was doing great. I'm like, yay, I'm a zero waster. But I was still consuming fast fashion. I was nowhere near being a minimalist. I still flew, I still ate meat. Yeah, whenever I was in Texas was when the first idea of veganism was planted in my head. And I had heard people every now and then say like, oh yeah, like cutting out meat will greatly reduce your carbon footprint. And I just was like, there's no way. I was in denial because I still enjoyed meat at the time. So it wasn't until I actually got here that I started doing more research into veganism. Also research into flying, because as you know, we live in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. That actually might be the East China Sea. So we have to fly in order to get back to America. I also started witnessing more plastic pollution because we are just one stop on the way to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And let me just show you what I mean when I say the litter problem.
You and I can weather any storm.
Another thing I learned when I moved to Okinawa is it was our first home together. And because it was our first home together, we didn't have much stuff to begin with, but it was a great chance for us to have like a fresh start and look at all of our stuff and be like, what do we even need? What can we get rid of? And what sort of habits can we establish right off the bat in our first house? So of course we did things like recycle. Starting out, we did buy a few things brand new, but we've definitely evolved. And it's really cool to see how that's happened. We've really both developed a minimalist lifestyle, and you can see that in my recent declutter video. So that's basically what I learned when I moved to Okinawa. Was I was even more aware of the issue when it comes to plastic pollution, especially living on the ocean. It also brought awareness to the issue we also have with coral degradation, species dying off. Getting to interact with a different people group, a different society has really opened my mind to how much they cherish and respect the earth. Some things that we can adopt for ourselves. Some other things I learned from my childhood was that, you know, of course we're taught never to litter and all the important stuff post-consumption, but I never knew anything pre-consumption. I didn't even think about the actions that me buying new versus used would have, or me buying unpackaged produce versus packaged produce, and simple things like that. So one of my first memories of environmentalism activism, I suppose, was when I was in high school. So my childhood home was in the middle of nowhere, but then eventually we moved into the town of 2,000 to 3,000 people. So still nothing compared to like Texas or Okinawa for me. But that's when we had a recycling program. We did not have recycling in my childhood home out in the middle of the country. So I was super, super excited when we actually got a recycling bin. As I got older, living out in the country, throwing away plastics and glass and cans just broke my heart. So when we moved into an area where we actually were able to recycle, that was a great step for me on my environmentalism journey, I think. It taught me those important things at a pretty young age, like 16. And I remember at my first real job, I worked at an ice cream place. We would go through gallons and gallons of soft serve ice cream mix. We threw away so much plastic and so much cardboard at that job. I asked my boss several times as well, like, hey, is there any way that we can recycle these? But of course, just like Texas, Ohio is a non-incentive state. So for business owners, there is no incentive for them to get recycle bins because they don't get paid for the recycling material. It's all out of pocket. And he wanted to avoid business expenses, and I can't blame him for that. So while I did have a few inklings and a few sparks of environmentalism action, when I was in high school, it stopped at that. It stopped at the desire to recycle. I thought recycling was saving the planet, and though it was doing better, it really wasn't that great, especially at the time, especially since I continued my other wasteful habits throughout my life. So it wasn't until I moved to Texas that I really started to take action and start to care more about the earth. Another thing that I realized when I moved to Okinawa, while I can do everything in my power to recycle properly and clean up the beaches, what good is that if I'm still part of the problem? If I'm still part of the people consuming single-use plastic? When we realize how low the recycling rate is, that's why recycling is just not great, especially with plastics, and why the first thing that we need to do when it comes to plastic waste is to reduce our consumption of it. I would just sit here and look at all this stuff and be like, I'm part of the problem still. I still buy so much stuff in plastic. And of course, I'm not completely zero waste. I still buy a lot of stuff in plastic. Like you saw in my snack haul earlier, that was all in plastic. And I wanted to show you that I'm still real. I'm not gonna hide things from you and pretend that I'm perfect. But I have come so far in the last 2 years since realizing that I don't want to be part of the problem. So that really brings us to now, to the present moment in my environmentalism journey. I'm still learning every day. I don't make these videos because I'm an expert on any of these topics. I make these videos because I do my own research on this stuff. I want to educate you guys as well. I want to educate so many people about these issues and bring awareness to them. I learn so much every day. I start new habits every day. So much changes every single day, and we just keep growing. I can't wait to see where we are in 2 years. I'll have to do like an update. I found him. I came to look for you. So that concludes my environmentalism journey up to this point. Still not perfect, but I am still learning, and that's all that matters. And that's really what I hope you learn from this too, is you can come from any region of the world. You can be as wasteful as they come, one step at a time. You don't have to change overnight. I really don't recommend changing overnight. If you are like me and you grew up in a very tiny, small town in America, actually anywhere in the world, you just grew up in a tiny town, I encourage you to get out of your town. That's how I learned about the issues that our world was facing, was when I left that town. But you don't even have to move. You can just do some research about world issues like the plastic crisis, global warming, climate change, racism, whatever. Do your research, learn more about other people's circumstances and situations, because us people in privileged nations, especially when we don't live in a big city, we often just forget about all that stuff, don't even care about it because it's not our world. It's not our problem. We're not having to deal with it. And I just also wanted this to be proof that your small changes really do have a big impact in the long run. You don't have to quit flying. You don't have to quit eating meat. You can just start by not using plastic water bottles anymore. And it really does go from there. The more you learn, the more that you're willing to change. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, remember that these small changes you make have a big impact in the long run. Bye, guys. You know you're a weird environmentalist when you find a glass jar at the beach and instantly think, wow, this is perfect for my sourdough. Not like, oh, there we go, some litter, I'm gonna put it in the recycle bin. But kick the air back on. I'm hot. That's all for now. Bye. Ooh, some scissors. I find the weirdest things on the beaches here. It's quite ridiculous. When you say you'll never make the mistake to turn the mic on, and then you don't turn the mic on. I look bald. You have anything? Okay. Mic's not on. Yeah, it is. What are those? I had a piece of sand in my mouth. Okay, there we go. We just got done snorkeling.
Aww.
And now it's snack time.
You dropped the pistachio.
That's sad, honey. This is really zoomed in. There we go. There we go.